If you have not heard of Manus AI agents got a lot of attention this past week. And I mean, people have been saying all year that 2025 was going to be the year of AI agents, and we're already seeing massive advancement in this. And Manus, not Magnus, Manus AI, it's a Chinese company, kind of, I don't know, lit the internet on fire with their multimodal AI agent that I've seen the demo video. I mean, it's pretty impressive with what it can do. It was able to do a lot of different tasks, which when I say multimodal, I mean, it's able to perform lots of different tasks all autonomously. And the thing with Manus specifically was it's relatively inexpensive. Now, I also want to mention that one of the other big kind of newsworthy things happening is OpenAI announced its $20,000 a month AI agent. So OpenAI is also coming to market with one. And again, these agents are designed to be, depending on who you talk to, they'll say they're human replacements. You'll hear that from the tech companies who are selling these in, saying, guess what? You won't have to hire these people because now you'll have these agents. I think other people are more in the camp of, well, they're augmentations, they're ways to support, to enhance the workforce you have. But thinking about OpenAI, I mean, if you're paying $20,000 a month, you're probably not tacking that on to one of your senior professionals and saying, hey, we hired you a $20,000 a month AI assistant to do your work. So take that for what you will. I'm in plenty of leadership conversations and have many concerns about where we're going with AI agents, but it's becoming a reality and a real threat to jobs and employment, and not necessarily because of, as you'll hear what I have to say on this, not necessarily because of what they're able to do, but what people believe they're able to do. So all that said, Manus AI really took the storm because if you can go to YouTube, you can look it up, look up Manus AI demo, and you'll see it. And they have it doing a couple of different activities. Like they ask it to help it plan a trip for somewhere. And it's a combination of deep research and not deep research, but that kind of thinking, like deep research and analytical activity. You can ask it to then generate, you can tell it you want to do a report and it'll generate all the reports and create all the stuff. You can even have it set up a website and put all this up, again, all on its own without any direction. Now, if you're listening to that going, that's amazing, this is the best thing ever, we'll talk about that. But at the same time, if you're hearing that and going, oh my gosh, this is the end of employment as we know it, which ironically, I was sitting with my kids last night and we happened to come across a YouTube video that was talking about, the inevitable World War III that's coming and the end of unemployment, or the end of employment. And I love going through that stuff with them because we just talk about it. We talk about what's real, what's not, how to think about this and how to process this. But Manus's agent is certainly powerful. Overall, I've looked at some other reviews of other folks that have used it. So just so you know, it's not something you can run out and sign up for. It has gotten so popular that it's invite only, and invitation keys are being sold for thousands and thousands of dollars. So if you want to play with it, you can either go spend thousands of bucks or you can wait a few months, because what is groundbreaking this week isn't going to be groundbreaking in probably by the time I record next week's episode, and there will be 10 other competitors doing the same thing. So I would just say, first of all, one, if you're getting too excited about it or you want to run and test it out, maybe just wait a little bit, because it does have some issues. I've looked at a number of different reviews and people who have actually experimented with it. It's not everything it claims to be, but it's further evidence between this and OpenAI's $20,000 a month agent that there's going to be a lot of companies evaluating and having to make decisions about, do we hire a person or do we implement an agent? Because again, $20,000 a month, I know there's plenty of people who would go, good grief, like that's way more than a person. And that is expensive. Manus isn't anywhere near that expensive. But either way, it's not free. Okay, so these agents aren't free, but the cost of them is going to continue to come down significantly. And as it does, more companies are going to be challenged with wrestling through Do we hire a person or do we choose an agent? Now, my issue with that line of thinking is I don't think it's the right kind of thinking. It's not a zero sum game of do we do it or do we not? Now, in terms of Manus, one of the most thoughtful and reviews of it was done by MIT. They did a technology review and they actually put it through the ringer on 3 different scenarios that were pretty robust. So the first one was let's see, what did they do? I'm trying to remember exactly what they were, but you can look this up. You can go to technologyreview.com, look up Manus review, and you'll see they ran it through the ringer. And their conclusion at the end was actually about what I expected it would be. If you have no programming background, if you're not a deep research analyst, if you're not somebody who's familiar with how to do data analysis and do extensive research, it's really helpful. It's going to do a heck of a lot better of a job than you would being inexperienced and going out and trying to wing it. Okay. They compared it to a really skilled human intern, which I would agree. That's about what I would expect with it. But even they acknowledged it was not smooth sailing. I mean, it took longer than you would think. You know, people talk like, oh, this is great. It's going to do the work of millions of people in seconds. And granted, it does a lot of work in a short amount of time, which I think is going to be risky because it's going to feed this whole instant gratification of like, why did it take you 5 minutes to research this topic? Well, good grief. Because we had to like think through even what AI came up with and validate, was it accurate and all this, but it also had a pretty high failure rate. Either it just straight up crashed or what it came back with wasn't accurate. Manus does have a more accurate response in its research, or it's more accurate than OpenAI's deep research, but it's not perfect. And so it still has to be checked and validated. And, so it's not perfect, I guess I would say. Now, what's so appealing about Manus is it's extremely inexpensive by comparison. It's like a tenth of what OpenAI is. So you're thinking $20,000 a month versus $2,000 a month. Now, if you think about that, spending $2,000 a month for this kind of access, you can see where a lot of companies would go, hey, like we usually pay, I don't know how many interns to do this kind of work. Why don't we just get a bunch of licenses to something like Manus? And that's today, it's 2,000 or 20,000. I'm telling you, you give this a few months and it's going to come free with every AI package you have. Just like deep research, you had to get this and now it's just included in everything. Everything that you're seeing is very quickly just going to become what's expected from everyone. But to those of you who are getting super excited about it, here's what I will tell you is that I watched these demos over and over and, watched as people said, oh, see, it can just do what humans do with no input. And I went, that is not an accurate assessment of what it's doing. Yes, it does a lot of things autonomously. And that's a good and a bad thing. Because even some of these demos, and I watched some where they went sideways, it was like it was moving so fast, you didn't even have time to catch what mistakes it was making until it was already done. And if you think about some of the high-risk things you might want a research analyst working on, you kind of don't want to go in front of like your shareholders before a board meeting, having just gotten something hot off the presses with no validation and go, speak confidently about how it is, only to find out that like, oops, turns out we had a bunch of hallucinations in there that, yeah, I know we went public with this, but that wasn't accurate. So you still need people involved, and looking at how it was done, yes, it lowers the bar for experience, but I was engaging with somebody on Substack the other day, and we were talking about the fact that it's funny how if you're a subject matter expert on something and AI does something, you notice that it's like half right. Like if you know what you're doing, you look at what it does and you're like, yeah, I mean, I guess, but this is not accurate. And I wouldn't do that. And that's not really the right way to go. No, gosh, absolutely not. This would do that. And I think about it as like book smarts versus street smarts. It'll give you all the technically correct information with a bunch of failure rates in it, but it doesn't really have the like practical contextual experience that people do. Now you might say, well, an intern doesn't have that either. Okay, that's fair, but maybe that's okay because maybe AI can replace a lot of the grunt work an intern is doing, and now you're focusing them on teaching them the context and helping them look for the failures in the AI so that you don't end up spreading a bunch of stuff. So to me, I know there are tons of companies who are going to look at this and go, this is great. We can plan on cutting back our workforces. We can do workforce planning and we'll have, an AI budget and we'll have a human budget and we'll lower our human budget and up our AI budget. I think companies that make that mistake are going to pay heavily for it. And so if you're in that camp, I would very much caution you. Sure, these things are only going to get better, but the limitations they have are always going to be limitations. It's inherent to the design. And as much as you hear, no, we're going to perfect that, we're going to close that gap, we're going to do this, it's like, it's just not how the technology works. And so I would just really caution you. Now, if you're somebody who has seen these videos or you go look at them and you go, oh my gosh, that's my job and it just did it. Yeah, I've said time and time again, and I stand behind it. Your job as you know it will be dead. As you know it being the key phrase there. You need to make sure you are deeply understanding your subject matter area, that you have strong perspectives and understand and can think critically about things, and that you're not just going through the motions. Because if your job is just to go to websites, compile the websites, dump it into PowerPoint, create a website based on the PowerPoint that you created and push it out and send a marketing brief, I mean, yeah, Manus can do your job probably vastly better and faster than you. And that's just the reality of it. So should you have reason for concern? Yes, you should. And you need to keep your skills sharp and you need to really understand what it is and be growing and developing, or you are going to be in big trouble because this is just going to expand these capabilities. And I didn't include it this week, but the humanoid robotics capabilities are just continuing to expand. So nobody will be immune from this. And Manus AI's launch and OpenAI's agent are just the tip of the iceberg, and we're only seeing the half of it. So is there reason to be a little concerned? Yeah. Should you be completely changing your strategy and going all in on AI? No. But more to come on this, and I'm going to be following this along, but you just wait. These agents, it's going to become like second nature. I mean, everybody's going to have one. And I think that's where, again, we're just going to adjust to it, but I'm convinced we're going to go through some really, really, really rough seas as we work through this, as companies make stupid decisions about this stuff.